Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of Wixo Season 2. We are now on episode 11 of this series, and in the last episode, at the very end, we saw the beginning of a war, which we will be taking a look at throughout this episode. If you guys do end up enjoying this episode, please do be sure to like and subscribe, and leave any ideas in the comments. So, at the end of the very last episode, obviously, which I have just recorded, by the way, I'm recording episode 10 and 11 in one go, so this is fresh out of my mind, but essentially what happened is the remnants of the soldiers that Greece didn't pay after the first war between them and Moldova, them and their family, mostly them and their sons now, formed a ragtag militia group and broke away under the funding of Moldova. And when Greece found out that Moldova was behind this, Greece declared war on Moldova, and this was also influenced by a powerful general who is in control of the Hungary colony. But yeah, let's go ahead and take a look at this war. So, at first, it goes like, well, it's in the favour of Greece at first, because Greece has, their proper army all ready and up, and while Moldova does have their army set up, they've just invaded parts of Ukraine, and they're still recovering from that. They still have to have a fairly large garrison here as well, because there is a lot of rebellious tribes. But yeah, Greece has the advantage down here, and also, really quickly, this is a slight diversion, but I want to talk about the power ranks really quickly as well, because I just did these. And these are our new power ranks, so you can go ahead and pause if you want to. But one thing that I do want to note, which is why I'm bringing these up now, is Moldova is just barely now stronger than Greece. Obviously, in that first war, Greece was stronger than Moldova, but now Moldova is stronger than Greece. Anyway, we have Greece continuing to move on in. However, once Greece has started to do very well, and this movement, it essentially just fizzles out, as we have Constantinople once again joining up with their friends and going ahead and joining in on this war. This rebellion is crushed, and once that happens, the Moldovan army comes on in. We have Moldova quickly moving in and unexpectedly, rapidly entering the city of Constantinople into a siege, and they quickly move around this Istanbul area, sieging a second city down here. And yeah, they actually do really well at kind of just moving into this region, and then they sort of fight with Greece, and it's a sort of stalemate. Greece has refined their strategy since that first war. However, it is a slow move in for Moldova. However, something that we need to talk about, which is important up here in the north, the general of the Hungary colony, this person who is in control, his father was that general who, during the battle near the end of the first war between them and Moldova, he was the one who, after Moldova took control of Constantinople and all of this Turkish regions, if you remember, Greece, on their own completely, after kicking out the Iraqi general even, they managed to fully retake this land. Obviously then after that, Moldova did make the landing, taking their capital, but still, that general who managed to do that extremely impressive campaign, his son is the general who is in control of this colony, and he hates Moldova so much, and he is actually one of the people that influenced the main government in Greece to go ahead and declare war on Moldova officially, because, he saw them doing this funding, and he is also looking for revenge against Moldova. And while this front line over here, over the past few months, has ended up looking something like this, in the north, he is ready to move. After gathering an extremely large force, he essentially takes 90% of the troops who are up here in Hungary who are very loyal to him, which gives him about 60,000 men to move with. He is going to be doing one of the most impressive things ever, and it is really going to be changing the aspect of this war, which Moldova feels they will be able to easily win. As in a surprise sort of method, he is going to take his soldiers and he is going to march them through the Carpathian Mountains. This is extremely difficult to do, and up until this point, many of the Carpathian regions haven't even been explored due to the severity of the mountain range. However, he is able to take his troops through, and because of this, he is able to have them in Ukraine, where Moldova was not able to stop them from coming through. This would have not worked in the south, because in this area, you're on the other side of the Carpathians, and Moldova will just fight you. However, if you're up here, you have the luscious areas of Ukraine where you can feed off the land and gather any more soldiers up here you want that might be, not happy with Moldova for invading their homelands. Many of the tribes up here are the same peoples that Moldova invaded, and this allows the general to gain about 10,000 extra soldiers while he is up here in Ukraine. And at this point, Moldova still has no idea that this is going on. However, this general is planning something. In the south, we have Moldova continue to push in, as they are now able to capture the city, and the siege of Constantinople is still ongoing. Now, they aren't really too worried about having Trebizond in. Trebizond probably would be willing to come in. However, Trebizond is kind of focusing on this region over here at the moment, as I did show in the last episode, which is that the events at the end of the last episode only took a few months before what's going on now. As it was, this is technically just a continuation of episode 10. But yeah, they're fighting over here at the moment, conquering these lands. And Moldova, they're like, oh, we'll do it ourselves. We'll be able to anyway, so they aren't too worried about that at all. As they continue to move into Greece, capturing another city and sieging this one on the coast. However, up in the north, the Greek general he is going on his plan. And what his plan is something that Moldova, once again, was not expecting at all, and is something that he hopes will be able to change the war. He believes that the problem that lost Greece the war the first time around is the fact that they were fighting on Greece's territory. He believes that fighting on Moldovan territory will not only cause chaos, but it will also allow them to gain the maneuver and, maneuverability to kind of cause more damage. If they're fighting on their territory, like if there's a huge battle in Greece's territory, Moldova doesn't care. If there's a huge battle on Moldova's territory, that could destroy a city, or not a city, but a town or something like that. And that's exactly what this general is planning. And with his new force, his idea is to move into the brand new conquered areas, as well as the conquered areas of Crimea, and cause them, due to them not liking Moldova as they haven't yet been assimilated, to rebel away and join his side, which he believes will create a two-front unwinnable war for Moldova. And now we can see this plan begin to take place, as we have the first Greek invasions into this new area, and just as this general had hoped, many of these new areas, especially the people in this city, begin to join his side, and this allows him to rapidly siege this city, cutting off most connection with this area other than these ports down here, and allowing him to gain a very large foothold in this part of eastern Moldova. And at this point, Moldova is freaking out because they are now having to fight someone over here. And yeah, however, for now, it's not too worrying. They're like, okay, whatever, we can just go fight him and win. However, when they go and send a general over to fight this guy, it becomes very apparent that the Greek man, he's very smart. He is able to use very impressive strategy in order to not only flank the army, but also disguise how small his force really is. The Moldovan army at this point is a lot stronger than Greece's army, hence why they won the power rankings. But this army, at this point, crossing the Carpathians lost them a lot of troops. While they did gain some from Ukraine, this army is only about 50,000 men strong, and the army that Moldova sent up is about 70,000 men strong. This is their, army that they haven't sent down here. And he is able to cause a huge defeat based on concealing his amount of troops, causing any Moldovan forces here to retreat after they're like, okay, we're going to lose. And they lose about 5,000 soldiers in this battle, and many of them are now recalled down to the south, as Greece actually wins the siege of this city. Despite this, Moldova still does manage to make advances in, but at this point, the amount of troops fighting on this front up here are relatively even. This allows the Greek general to continue to move in, and at this point, a second major battle, and this one is extremely important for this general to win, as he believes if he is able to retake the city, it will cause a huge rebellion in the newly invaded Crimean country. This was their former capital, and it is still like the distributal capital, so essentially Moldova sends stuff over here and distributes it through the newly invaded areas. He hopes if he invades this will cause this to collapse and allow them to, rebel and join his side. And during the battle, many Moldovan forces get cocky, and they actually do have a larger force at this battle. However, after a long fight outside the city gates, where the Moldovans actually don't go into a siege, which is a big mistake, he is able to defeat them and capture this city. And this is a huge blow, and at this point Moldova is getting a little bit concerned about what is going on over here. However, they aren't too worried at this point, as they are still doing fairly well in the south. However, many troops are beginning to get called up to fight this guy, and this gets even worse once what the general hope would happen does happen, as we have the former Crimean country and all of these regions over here breaking away and joining his side. This actually causes Moldova to lose some land to nearby tribes, as they have to fight a bunch of these areas, and once again, a lot of these tribes don't like Moldova as their lands have been conquered, so yeah, really not looking good for Moldova up here anymore. We also finally have this area be conquered, and this city, which had held out for over a year and a half now, that has been how long it has been under siege, it finally falls, and this is a huge morale loss. They also lose about 5,000 soldiers who were, garrisoning the city. And at this point, the Greek general has allowed himself to maintain a big foothold in the north. However, but for a while the general does stay here, which gives Moldova a little bit of breathing time, which is probably a bit of a blunder, as keeping the pressure on is probably what this general should be doing. However, for now, he just consolidates his army and tries to regain any lost troops in terms of gaining local troops in this area. In the south, it's still going fairly well for Moldova, and we finally have a little bit of a pick-me-up take place for Moldova, as they officially manage to get Trebizond in on the war, who jumps in and quickly moves towards Constantinople. This finally does cause the loss of the city of Constantinople. However, unlike last time, Constantinople is way more consolidated down in the south, and them losing their capital isn't as big of a deal as it was last time. And eventually we actually do see a bit of a stalemate take place with these Trebizond forces, and we also see a slowing of movement on the invasion of Greece, as the second siege of this city is also lost by Moldovan forces. However, they once again are moving around in other places. However, at this point, the Greek general up in the north, he has, regained any lost troops in terms of numbers, and he has strengthened them, and they are ready for their next conquest. And to do this, the general's plan is to move into the heartland of Moldova to cause as much chaos as he can, and in turn he hopes this will cause a complete destabilization on the fronts fighting Greece, allowing Greece to move up in the north to meet him and hopefully to win the war. So with his army he moves on north, and the Moldovans actually realize that this is his plan, and they must stop him at all costs, because they've seen that this guy, at first, when he first invaded, they were like, oh, whatever, but he has won, at this point, 3 pretty large battles against them, so at this point, Moldova is like, okay, it's nothing to worry about, we can just send up a big force and fight them. So, the Greek general's 50,000 forces are met by a force of 75,000 Moldovan troops, and this is the biggest army by far that this general up here has had to fight. Before they had like 60,000 troops up here before, but that wasn't all in that battle that I mentioned earlier. But this time it's like 50,000 troops versus like 80,000 troops, and yeah, it's a big battle. And what is the Greek general's plan to win this battle? Well, that's a trick question. He doesn't plan to win this battle, he plans to not participate in it. While he is definitely a good strategist, he understands that just throwing men at a meat pile is probably not going to be very good, and he has just rejuvenated his forces and regained the numbers he lost in the first conquest up here. He does not want to lose it again. So what he does is he sends out about 5,000 forces as a dummy army to go and meet the Moldovan troops here, and very sneakily during the night, in pitch black, he sends out the rest of his forces past, and using some pretty, good tactics, he is able to maneuver his troops through without having to carry any supply lines. They basically live off the land, and this allows them to kind of just escape past the troops. And in the morning, by the time the Moldovan forces realize this is just a dummy army, it's already too late, and the forces of the Greek general are, they're going through. And at this point, Moldova is like, oh, well, okay, so they wanted to avoid that battle. However, this is something else that this general planned. As you may see here, these forces move back in and capture this land, cutting off supply lines for this army, and the dummy army, it turns out, is actually not a dummy army, as it moves around and cuts off the supply lines in the north, encircling this army inside of this territory. And at this point, once the forces meet each other, a lot of the surrounding land has been taken, and the forces have been encircled. Many of them try to retreat down this river, however, this results in a complete loss, as many of the troops drown, and there are like armed bridges, like full of Greek forces, waiting for these troops to arrive, and it is a complete bloodbath, with no escape for these forces. It is just a fight to the death, and the armies are positioned in a way as to where the Moldovan army is just in a big clump, so the troops are kind of getting squished in on each other, whereas they are being surrounded. If I were to draw it on a bigger scale, it would be like big clump and then thin line. So all of the Greek forces can fight, as they are all on the outer ring. However, these middle forces of Moldova here, they cannot fight, which actually gives them a numerical advantage, and this causes the worst defeat in Moldovan history, and probably in world history, as they lose 70,000 troops. The 5,000 that they don't lose just kind of ran away, so, well, they're probably just going to die anyway from execution. But yeah, this is by far the most impressive victory of this general. And this strategy and deception of, making them think that they were trying to escape fighting worked perfectly. And with this, the doors are now open to the core of Moldova. Uh-oh. With this happening, we have a huge, just pulling of forces, like go, 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 stop this guy up here. And this actually causes a win, a pretty big win, in fact, one of the first big wins on this southern front line, allowing Greece to regain a lot of this land and even siege this city. In Turkey, however, though, Trebizond, who is kind of separate from this main aspect, they have still managed to make some more gains finally after a little while of stalemate. But at this point, really, really not going too well. And what the general hopes to do is capture the capital city of Moldova, as it is the base of operations, and it would be a huge loss to Moldova if they did lose it. So, we have this general moving in. However, before this, he is going to go ahead and move over to attempt to take this city, as he hopes, Moldova has already really been kicked back heavily in the north, and he really hopes that if he is able to, incur more defeats on the power of Moldova, he might not even have to, properly fight Moldova itself, as he hopes that many of these other regions might, turn to his favour. And he hopes he can do this with the capturing of this city, which, after a long battle, and they've probably lost some more troops, so it's probably 45k to about 50k. It's still, I mean, this guy is on fire. He still wins this battle, and at this point, most of the northern supply lines from the capital to this northern Romanian and Moldovan area have been severed, and along with this, like how I mentioned earlier, he is defeating Moldova really badly here, and many people are like, yo, let's switch to his side. More specifically, this city up here, which controls the surrounding region, switches to his side, and this allows a huge chunk of this northern land to fall over to the Greek, forces. And at this point, Moldova has essentially just been 7-2, and with this huge defeat, they lost about 50%. It's not as bad as a defeat as up here, but it's definitely more showing, even if we send forces up here, we still lose, and really not good. And overall, the general up here is really doing well. Now, one thing he isn't too happy about is the defences of the capital city. One thing he does not want to get stuck in is a war of attrition, and he believes that he could not easily, at least in the circumstance he is now, actually take the capital city. And because of this, he wants to incur more defeats on Moldova in order to make more people switch to his side, and Moldova realises this, and as I will mention in a second, they develop a pretty interesting strategy that they hope will, kind of change the tide of this war and not allow this to happen so that they can't build up an even stronger force. But anyway, back down south, we have Trebizond go ahead and continue to move in, and Trebizond is doing really well, and while up here it's not going well for Moldova's side, down here it certainly is, as Constantinople is really starting to struggle at this point, and they get kicked back mostly to the coast, something like this, and we even have a city over here be captured. At this point, we also have Egypt down here, which has, kind of recently formed up, and, not recently formed up, but recently expanded. They're a bit hungry, and they are looking at some of these Greek possessions, and they are thinking, maybe that would be nice, but, Greece is kind of winning right now, so we'll have to see. In the south, this front line has, at this point, pretty much stalemated. Moldova somehow actually manages to win this siege, and this is going to form a bit of the backbone of what I was talking about earlier. Moldova is noticing that when they are not fighting this general, they are able to do pretty well. This is shown down here. And Moldova has also realised, yo, these guys joined their side because of the embarrassing defeat. Same thing up here. If we get heavily, harmed, then that's going to make our pupils want to switch sides to the, the Greek general up here. So what if we just don't lose battles? Well, how are we going to not lose battles? We don't fight directly, but we cause damage to his flanks. And that is exactly what Moldova is going to go with here. As this general, he knows right now they can't go for the capital, and Moldova knows this too. So what he is planning to do is take this city, and he moves his army down, and Moldova, instead of fighting at the city, they just tell the civilians, yo, sit tight, you're going to be fine, don't worry. The civilians like, oh my god, help us please, this guy's going to destroy us. But then Moldova starts pushing in on the flanks, cutting off supply lines, which are important for this army, as, like I have said, now that they are deep into Moldovan territory, they can't really live off the land, because nobody here really likes them. So you can't really just go into some guy's farm and get the food, because he's probably going to chase you off with like a pitchfork. So just doing this is probably the best strategy, and this actually causes a lot of disorganization on part of the Greek general, causing him to push back and incur a minor defeat on the Moldovan army. That gets like he can move his army faster than the Moldovan army, so he's still able to defeat them. However, it's really not a bad defeat, and it's kind of just like a 50-50 stalemate. And this is very bad for the Greek general, as he was hoping that something like this would have, okay, they've won this and now they're right at the capital, all of these guys are going to rebel. But they haven't been able to do that, and these guys are like, maybe Moldova might be able to do well. Furthermore, down in the south, after a lot of conscription, like they are really scraping the bottom of the barrel here, conscripting like 90-year-old men and like kids to go fight the main Greek front line, as they need all of their professional soldiers up here. We actually see Greece begin to struggle. At this point, a lot of the Greek industry has been exhausted from this war, and they are also pulling tremendous amounts of resources from all of their colonies, which is not going along well in their colonies, and especially Hungary. They are pulling so much from here to fight this war effort, and Hungary, which now does not have a Greek garrisoning force, as the force that was garrisoning it is now fighting over here, is starting to get a few ideas. But anyway, we have the city down here once again be captured, and Trebizond is able to continue to move in. Up in the north, the Greek general is going on his second attempt at this, and this time he is going for the same city again. However, one thing he really didn't think about is, maybe we shouldn't have all of our army go for one battle, because he's thinking if we can catch the Moldovans off guard, we'll have our entire unified force here, hopefully beat them, and then we won't even have to take the city, winning that battle to, cause all these guys to rebel. But then Moldova does this, and that does two things. First of all, they get a city back, which is nice, and that cuts off a lot of these, rebellion areas, but it also just causes a lot of chaos down here, and it also cuts off a lot of supply lines from this city. And not only does this cause a bit of, kind of a stalemate in terms of, okay, they didn't win the battle, but they didn't really lose anything either, it also causes them to lose. So they have to, come back, and they try to go for this city. Moldova obviously isn't going to fight him directly, because it's been shown at this point that that doesn't work, so they regain the city, but the effect is still shown, and they have overall been pushed back here. And this is great news for Moldova, and it is causing many of these, areas up north to think, maybe Moldova can pull its own weight. But anyway, back down to the south, Moldova is still pushing on, and it is at this point we're seeing the fact that they are even able to beat them back slightly. I mean, definitely not something like what was going on with their first war, how they were just rampaging through, but they are still able to beat them back. Greece starts pulling so much stuff and people and everything from Hungary, until the point where there is essentially no garrisoning forces over here in Hungary, and this land has only recently been controlled, and the local population has not been treated very nicely by their Greek overlords. Remember when the soldiers first came in, they just came in and raided and stuff, and that was kind of considered their payment, but that wasn't for all soldiers, obviously, because that stuff happened down here. But Hungary is going to take this chance to break away, as we have a huge amount of Hungarian rebellions essentially in all of the rural areas, pushing any remaining Greek garrisoning forces back to the cities. And I just want to say, most of the people that live outside of the cities and towns in this area are Hungarian, but all of the people that live in the cities are Greek. There are no Hungarian people here, and this is furthering that idea of, the Greeks see themselves as higher up than us, we're subjugated, let's break away. And with very little forces here, they're able to break away. And this is very bad, not only for Greece, as this will get them, less resources and stuff, but it's bad for this general up here, as he was still receiving some supplies from this through some, mountain passages that were easy to travel through. And this further causes losses. Essentially, Moldova sends up mini armies, well, they probably wouldn't call it mini armies, but they send up smaller armies to fight in the areas where the general isn't, as they have noticed. And this isn't just, them kind of finding out strategy. This is them, building tactics that they know will work against the general. And they've noticed that the general really likes to have his whole army in one clump, which Moldova doesn't need to do, because while they're, going in and invading, this is their territory. So Moldova can just send up, small, lightweight armies to really rapidly move, and before the general knows it, both of these two cities in the core Moldovan area are under siege. Furthermore, another breakaway state happens in Greece. As we have huge regions of the Carthaginian area break away, these people also, similar to Hungary, they don't feel as subjugated. I mean, they are somewhat part of the religion of Greece. However, these peoples, they have been, the resources people that aren't even that loyal to Greece have just been sent to the front lines to die. And yeah, these guys have had enough of it. And we have Carthage essentially breaking away as a unified state. The Moldovan armies begin to push so far into Greece that eventually, after over 5.5 years of fighting up here in the north, the Greek general, Greece knows that this guy, he's definitely capable, and at this point, he is seen as probably the only person that can stop this. So it's seen by Greece as more important to defend their mainland than to do whatever this guy was doing up here. So he is recalled back down to the mainland, and because of this, all of this conquest up here essentially goes to waste. As with the last of the Greek forces being withdrawn, they are kind of moved back around. They have to avoid Hungary now. But the Greek forces are withdrawn and the general is pulled back down. He is extremely saddened by this, as this was essentially, for the last half a decade of his life, this was his, this was his pride, this was his conquest, and he has lost it. As any remaining rebellion forces that were only fighting because they were like pro-Greece, seeing the fact that they've been abandoned, and with a little bit of help from a few Moldovan troops who are very angry, yeah, Moldova is able to reclaim this land. And with this happening, we essentially see the final battle happen. The war-hardened Moldovan troops, who are they're ready for some blood really, they are ready to fight the general, but now on the Greek turf. And the battle is set for this city right over here. And during this battle, we have an extremely prominent Moldovan general, one of the two. There are two main generals down here essentially that have been allowing Greece to be pushed back, despite the fact that Moldova down here at some point actually did lose the numerical advantage. These two generals are extremely strong. They are even somewhat comparable to the Greek general up here, although the Greek general is definitely better. But one of these generals, he comes up with an amazing strategy, and he uses it during the battle in order to encircle the cavalry of the Greek army under the Greek general. And this causes the lightweight and maneuverability portion of the army to be lost, and eventually it just becomes a kind of siege of the city, and this city is lost. And with this, most of the general's army is defeated. The general has lost about 75% of his forces, and from here, with only a few small battles moving down, eventually the Moldovan army reaches and takes the capital of Greece, and the Greek government, along with the Greek general, agree to peace terms. So yeah, that was an extremely long war and very much a continuation of that original war. And unfortunately for Greece, they really did try their best. That general was really putting in work. But in terms of gaining new strategies in order to eventually defeat him, and also the just sheer will of Moldova to keep fighting down here with Greece even when they had the advantage, proved to be enough to pull them through and win this conflict. And we can now go ahead and take a look at this peace treaty. So this is what we are going to go ahead and see for our peace treaty, and there is quite a lot to cover, but land gains as a whole are very plentiful for especially Moldova, but also a bit for Trebizond. So what land does Moldova gain? So Moldova gains about this, and then they also gain this part of Constantinople and this puppet state, which I'll talk about in a second. But essentially, Moldova just asserts its dominance over the southern part of the Balkans before Greece, and the Constantinople gap. Greece is pushed down very heavily. They also lose all of their colonies, so now they are literally just this. And a new Albania breakaway state is formed because this area is kind of like less religious. Obviously, this area up here mostly, but this area as a whole, as it was originally part of that different culture that eventually formed Italy. In terms of the Greek colonies, this one is now its own separate country, although yeah, maybe not for too long. That old Red Cyprus country is back. Carthage, and they also got Sardinia is here, and we have a Sicily country. Trebizond got a huge chunk out of Constantinople, which no longer exists. This puppet state is not a continuation of Constantinople. This is a completely new country with its capital in Crete. So yeah, RIP Constantinople. I think they were here since episode 1. So yeah, Hungary country is like official, and Moldova got a bit of more land up here as they fought back some tribes as a bit of revenge, I guess. And I believe that is it for the land changes, and for not land changes, that economical alliance is gone. I was going to turn on the layer, but obviously you wouldn't be able to tell. So yeah, and I think that is it for the war and the peace treaty. So yeah, I might do a few more events, but yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that war. That was the main centerpiece, and this has really asserted Moldovan dominance as a regional power. I think the one thing I will do before calling this episode a day is our daily Japan update, because we can't miss the daily Japan updates. The Pink Country is going to try and invade Hokkaido, and they are not going to go very well. These guys fought that war last episode, so they got a bit cocky, but Hokkaido manages to hold their own, and they really don't get in that far. So pretty small daily Japan update today. But that is going to be it for this episode. I really hope you guys did enjoy, and more so, I hope you guys enjoyed the war, and I will see you guys in the next one.